It's time for ROTD Weekend.
Marty and I attended a comedy writing workshop this past weekend. It was so fun and so inspiring. Don't worry, I'm not trying to become a comedy writer or anything like that. It was just offered at the place where we take our improv classes. There was a visiting teacher, a guy named Rich Tellerico, who's like written for SNL and Key and Peele and like a whole bunch of stuff. And I was like, I need to dig into this. And it was really great. He told us a lot about what it's like to be part of a writer's room. If you watch any of those like comedy news shows or like Conan or anything like that, and about sitcoms and writing pilots. But really, we did a whole bunch of writing exercises and these little tasks that were really like fun, but got my brain working in different ways than normal. Or so I thought. So one of the exercises was something that he called a riff sheet, R-I-F-F, like where you're riffing on an idea, right? And I'll just give you like a concrete example. We did one where we had to come up with a pet peeve, something that bothered us. Ours was when somebody in front of us in the checkout line at the grocery store is taking too long. And you just rant about that for a little while, all the complaints that you have, like they're in the 10 or less aisle, but they've actually got 20 things, or they're counting all their individual yogurts as one thing because they're the same thing, or somebody is like paying with cash and the cash register clerk doesn't know how to give change, like all the different like ranting things that you can talk about and like be annoyed by that person who's taking too long. And then after ranting, then you do the riffing. And this is just like anything even remotely related to this that you might think about. And so that can get further into like talking about how maybe the grocery store is trying to keep you there longer because maybe their stats are better if people are in the store for longer. Almost like a mall. When you go to the mall, you know, malls are trying to keep you there because the longer you're there, the more stores you'll go into, the more money you'll spend. So there's like reasons to keep you there. So now you're like riffing about malls and you get like further and further afield into like when were malls invented and like that kind of thing. And oh, you know what? I'm just going to tell you something really funny because I loved this part. You also do a research part. So you do the rant, you do the riff, and then you do some research. And so we started researching like people taking a long time at the grocery store checkout and discovered that there is a chain of grocery stores in the Netherlands called, I believe it's called Jumbo, that has a special lane for people who want to take longer. It's for people who want to talk to the cashier and want to talk to each other and like spend time at the grocery store just chilling and not rushing. So that was just this really funny, like unexpected find. And then I was like, oh, that actually sounds nice. You know, I work from home. Sometimes I have days where I don't really talk to anybody. Maybe I'd like to go to the grocery store and purposely be in the chatty lane. So yeah, you see how that goes. We had a little pet peeve. We ranted about it. Then we like riffed on the idea, came up with other extensions of the idea, and then also did some research, and maybe that gave us some ideas as well. And you can see how if you were a comedy writer writing like an episode for a sitcom or doing jokes for some stand-up comedian or something, you would pull from all of those different things to flesh out your idea and give it sort of more depth, more little inspirations and ideas that you can build off of, right? Okay, so I loved that. It was a really, really fun experiment. And then today, as I was sitting down to do my meal plan, I pulled out this book that I have. It's this little notebook that for whatever reason over the years, I just always use for meal planning. It is not chronological. I just kind of open it to a page, and if there's space, I start writing there. I'll usually put the date. I do put the date. I put the date at the top of all pages that I write on, just about something that I learned way back in elementary school that I always do. So if you flip through the book, you'll see things from like March of 2021, and then the next page will be like December of 2025, and little bits and pieces here and there. But what I realized is that when it comes to like big dinner planning, when I'm having people over, or it's like Easter's coming up, I do a riff sheet, and I hadn't even thought about it. There are pages of this book that are just like lists of people's names and things I know that they like or don't like, and then like little jot down ideas kind of around that, and then a menu comes out of that. So it turns out that this thing that I was like, oh, new idea, I love this riff sheet idea, a very cool way to brainstorm, is actually something that I've been doing all the time and is not a new idea at all. just maybe applying it to comedy was new, right? I'm not exactly sure what my point is. It's not everything old is new again, nor is it there are no new ideas, although I guess both of those apply. So yeah, both of those, that's my point. Sure, I'll take that. But also just, give this a try sometime. If you need ideas for something, accepting every idea that you have, not saying, no, that doesn't work, that's silly, whatever. Just everything that's coming to mind, pour it out on that piece of paper. Nobody sees it but you. And you never know. It's often like the 5th or 6th or 7th idea that's actually the good one. And you don't get there unless you, riff on it a bit and let it kind of grow and build. And I don't know, if you have a little notebook like mine that you then turn back to and flip through, those ideas do stay there, and maybe it doesn't get used today. Maybe that dinner party idea or that meal plan or that special recipe idea that you had that you wanted to make for someone, maybe that doesn't get used today, but maybe it'll get used next year or the year after. Or maybe you'll just tell someone about it and they'll be inspired to make it. So yeah, give it a try. Do some brainstorming about something, meal planning, a dinner, or about some pet peeve you have, and have some fun with it. So today, in the second part of this podcast, I am continuing my series of telling you about things that I make that are not on my websites. And so today we are hearing about something that has come from Marty spending time in Israel years ago, and some time that we spent in Spain, and then just some riffing on that. So let's hear about that after the break. So first I had to look it up and check. Yes, the supermarket chain in the Netherlands and in Belgium, it seems, that has some of their aisles at their checkout as like chatty aisles or chatty corners of the grocery store that they've instituted to help people with loneliness and to just make people not feel rushed. It's very sweet. That chain of supermarkets is called Jumbo. And I am sort of thinking that I should talk to my local Publix grocery store and see if they want to do something like that, because I think it's a really charming idea. Okay, so also charming idea, or delicious idea, I guess, is this recipe that I'm going to tell you about. It's not a recipe because I've never written it down, but I will say it first started when Marty spent a summer in Israel for a work-related thing he was doing. This was years ago, maybe like 2017, 2018, and he was in Israel and he came back telling me about the different foods that he'd loved, and one of them was a dish where you have like chopped tomatoes, maybe with cucumbers, maybe with some onion mixed up and some salt and olive oil. And you sort of put that mixture on a plate and then you cook chicken thighs, something with a bit of fat to it. And then while those are still warm, you add that to the tomato mixture on your plate, and the tomatoes kind of mix with the juices from the chicken, and it is delicious. And we would often serve it with like pita bread and tzatziki, and that was just like a really nice dinner that we loved to have, inspired by his time in Israel. And yeah, it's really, really delicious. You're just chopping up tomatoes, cucumbers, red onion with some salt, maybe some olive oil, putting it on your plate, and then the chicken goes on top. I think sometimes we put some lemon juice in there as well, squeeze a little lemon. It's different all the time. This is, again, one of those things that I make without a recipe. Oh, I'm going to tell you something. So I don't know if you've noticed, but lately on my websites, I've been doing a lot more recipes for, like, I don't want to say basics, but they are actually things that I make all the time without a recipe. Things like chili and stew and, I don't know, chicken salad. There's been a lot of them lately, right? And the reason I've been doing those is because those are things that I make all the time, and my kids are doing a lot more cooking. And as you know, my son is heading off to college in the fall. Well, here in Florida, college starts in August, so heading off to college in the summer. But so he's heading off, and I really feel like it's time for me to make sure that all of the recipes that I just make all the time are on the website so that they can find them easily and learn to make them themselves. So all the ones that are just in my head, you know what I mean? The ones that I don't have a recipe for, I've started actually making notes when I'm making them and perfecting them and getting them just right. Like if I'm making this just on a whim one day, how do I hope it tastes? That's my goal, and that's what I'm developing and working towards, and those are what's going up. So I guess this is one that I really should put on the site as well, because I do make it so often. So yes, where was I? Yes, the Israel-inspired tomato and cucumber, or sometimes just tomato, with the chicken on top. And then a couple of years ago for spring break, me and Marty and my daughter went to Barcelona. My son was on a school trip, and the three of us were in Barcelona, and we fell in love with pan con tomate. I'm probably saying that wrong. It is bread with tomato. And most places made it by toasting some bread and then rubbing a cut garlic clove on it. And I'm just going to say, if you are one of the people who's heard of that or seen somebody on a cooking show doing that and thought, no, that's not going to get you much garlicky flavor, I won't bother, you are so wrong. You have to try it. It gets so much garlic flavor onto toast. Like any kind of crusty toasted surface that you rub the cut side of a garlic clove on, the juices from the garlic are just instantly transferred onto there. So good, so easy. You must try it if you haven't. But anyways, they rub the cut side of garlic on a piece of bread, and then they do like a tomato mixture with some salt, sometimes some olive oil that has some juiciness to it, like that tomato water. I love tomato water. And then they scoop that onto the bread. Sometimes they dip the bread in it. There's like different versions of it, right? But yeah, so you have tomato on garlic toast, and it is just simple and just delicious. But then there was this one place that I went to on my own. Marty and Jamie were not feeling well, and so I went by myself out for lunch one day, and I ordered the pan con tomate there because I'd been having it everywhere. And in that place, it came as the toasted garlic baguettes with a big bowl of the tomato mixture on the side that you scoop on yourself. And it had a lot of that tomato water in the bottom. And I was just like in the most heavenly place in the world. This was a restaurant on the beach. I was looking out at the water and the sand. There was a dance class going on, like maybe a 30-second walk from where I was sitting, of like older people learning how to do some kind of dancing. So the music was playing and I could see them out of the corner of my eye dancing and smiling and having fun. And I was eating this amazing bread and tomato thing that I loved. And I was kind of like dipping the bread in the tomato water and then sometimes scooping the tomatoes onto the bread. And I don't know, just totally fell in love. So then when we got back, we started doing that more often, the bread and then this tomato mixture. And then over time, that Israeli-inspired mixture with the chicken kind of merged with this tomato mixture. And so now what I do all the time, and I'm actually thinking I should go back and do either one of the originals at some point. But anyhow, what I do all the time now, like almost anytime anybody's coming over for dinner here, guests, or if I'm just like looking for something quick and special and delicious to have to add to our dinner, it's a bowl of chopped tomatoes, and crucially, as I'm chopping them, any liquid that's coming out of them, I'm scraping with my knife from the cutting board into the bowl. You want all the juiciness in there that you can get. And then I'll also usually do some cucumber, finely chopped. The ratio is kind of like 2/3 or 3/4 chopped tomato to 1/3 or 1/4 of the cucumber. So it's really much more tomato, much more of that softness. The tomato's softer than the cucumber. And I think the cucumber is usually in slightly smaller pieces than the tomato. Does any of that matter? I don't know. It's just the texture that I want. Like really nice, soft, juicy tomato with little bits of something a little crunchier sometimes, you know? And then to that, I often am using my rasp and shaving in some garlic clove. This is like my new favorite thing for salad. Sometimes I just mince up a garlic clove, but I really like it when it's shaved right in there. It's like extra garlic flavor. Or sometimes no garlic, sometimes it's red onion. And then if it's red onion, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's not very much. It's like if you scooped up a whole tablespoon of this mixture, it would be mostly tomato with maybe 2 dots of cucumber and 1 dot of red onion on it. That's about how much you want. As I said, this is not a recipe that I've written down yet. This is just all in my head, and this is just what I do. And so I'm doing my best to tell you, like if I was about to try and develop it, that is the direction I would go. And then I would measure things from there, right? Okay. And then the most important part is some kosher salt. I guess you could use any salt, but I always use kosher salt for this one. And I just put like some in my palm and sprinkle it over. And it's like a light sprinkling over the top of the bowl. Like if it was like a chicken breast and you were going to season that with kosher salt, that's kind of the amount of a dusting that you want on the surface of the ingredients in that bowl. And then give it a stir. Sometimes I add a little glug of olive oil to this and stir and then kind of squish down with my spoon. And I will usually make this as the first thing that I make when I start making dinner. And then I just set it aside at room temperature and leave it there. And what happens is the salt draws some of the moisture out of the tomatoes and the cucumbers. And you get this like really juicy tomato cucumber mixture. And you know, it's salty and it has the garlic or onion. So just that tiny bit of pungency. And then tomatoes have that nice like umami kind of flavor, the meatiness, whatever that is. And it's just like deliciousness in a bowl. And then, well, what do you do with it? So that one I'll often just serve on the side in the bowl with a meal that is otherwise not that interesting. Like we're having, chicken and rice. Then this gets scooped onto the rice and you kind of pick it up with bites of chicken and rice. I've scooped this onto salads if it was salad, of course, with bread and like as a dip for the bread and also like you're spooning it onto the bread. Oh, it's something that I often make if I do the version of the Tuscan soup that I make for us all the time, which is also not on my website. This is a Tuscan soup, kind of like the Olive Garden Tuscan soup, but I use farro, which some people call farro, instead of potatoes. So it's kind of grainier. And I find that the farro has a texture that's kind of similar to the Italian sausage crumbles that are in that soup. Like I buy the sausage meat and fry that up and then it's kind of crumbly. And so the farro makes it seem like there's more sausage in there than it is. It's really good. And there's kale in there as well. So when I make that, I usually make twice as much of the farro as I need. And then we have the soup. And then a couple days later, I'll do farro as our side dish and I will make this tomato mixture to spoon on top of it. And then sometimes I'll also serve some capers alongside of that. Not everybody in my house likes capers, but Marty really likes this caper farro tomato green bean dish that I used to make years ago that I should start making again. Gosh, I don't remember when I last made that. But anyhow, he likes that. It has capers in it. So then I'll sometimes serve the capers alongside and it's kind of similar to that dish. So that is my whole big riff on the Israeli-inspired, Barcelona-inspired combination-y thing that I now make all the time that I've never written down, that I hope you try, even though I haven't written it down. I think I've given you enough information that you can absolutely do it. Okay, I will be right back after a break to talk about what's going on in my kitchen this week. So I am trying something a little bit new right now. If I sound different than I did in the first two segments of the show, it is because there are workmen in my house today. They're enclosing an open space that never really gets used, so I've decided to turn it into a room, like a guest room. And so it's loud. It's right outside of my office. It's loud. So I have moved into my bedroom closet to record this, and we're still going to hear them sometimes. I am sorry. That is happening. I work from home. This is my business, and sometimes there's chaos. Anyhow, I hope it's not too disruptive, and I hope I sound okay. So yeah, what's going on in my kitchen? I am excited to tell you that I have a recipe coming up soon that uses leftover ham. That's what I am working on this week. So it was a couple weeks ago that I did the video for my How to Bake Ham Perfectly post for that recipe. That's for a spiral ham glazed with a marmalade glaze. So good. And I also was testing a glaze out on my boneless baked ham. That's the whole one, not the spiral cut. So I had a lot of ham and I did some research into what you can do when you have lots of ham. And one of the things was something called ham salad that I had not had before, or I don't think I had. And it's often ground up, processed processed into almost a spread. And I tried that and I didn't love it that much. But what I fell in absolute love with was a version where it's finely chopped with some mayonnaise and some relish. I did the dill relish that I love. It's an amazing recipe. So that has been tested. I'm doing one more round on the pictures and the video for that this week. And then also, I told you about how I'm doing recipes that I make all the time without a recipe. One of them that I haven't made in a long time, but that I used to make all the time and never thought twice about, was a Mississippi pot roast. Have you had this before? I usually make things more from scratch or from scratch-ish, but this one is just so good that I used to make it all the time, and I'm going to be making it again this week to just test it again. And so the Mississippi pot roast is done in the slow cooker. It's a chuck roast, and you put it in there, and you sprinkle a packet of ranch seasoning over it. You sprinkle a packet of au jus seasoning over it, and then you add some pepperoncini peppers and some butter, and then it just goes in the slow cooker. And the juices from the roast, from that beef, mix with all those powders and turns into this just light gravy that you then shred the beef into. Now, when I was thinking about this, one of the reasons that I sort of stopped making it or loved how it tasted but didn't love something about it was that it's a little greasy and you kind of end up with this grease slick on top of that sauce. And so what I want to try and do this week as a first test is to see if I can make that less greasy. Also, the sauce is a little salty. The ranch powder and the au jus mix and the pepperoncini for that matter, especially if you add some of the juice from the jar, which some people do, that's all really salty. So I spotted in the grocery store that they make a reduced sodium au jus powder. I'm going to try that, and I'm going to try to not include the juice from the pepperoncinis. And I'm telling you what I'm trying first. We'll see what works. I want to try skimming some of the fat off. So make the whole roast in the slow cooker and then take the beef out of the slow cooker and let it just kind of sit there for a minute, that sauce, so that the fat rises to the top. And there's not very much in the bottom of the slow cooker from what I remember, but I want to let the fat rise and then try and skim some off. And then I want to see if I can whisk it to emulsify into a more cohesive sauce. I don't think there's enough liquid in there to do an immersion blender thing. I think it's shallower than that, but that would be amazing. I could try transferring the liquid from the slow cooker into another container and then try, but that feels like it defeats the whole point of this recipe, which is that it's really, really simple and doesn't have a lot of steps. So I'm going to try the skim off some fat, whisk it really well, add the shredded beef back in first. But yeah, I'm excited about this. I haven't had it in a while and we used to love it. So stay tuned. It may be on the website coming soon. So yeah, that's what's going on in my kitchen this week. And then, okay, so what is new on the websites recently, sort of in this theme of things I make all the time without a recipe, but now I'm writing down what I do. There is a white chicken chili recipe on Cook the Story. This one is thickened by pureeing white beans right into the sauce, and it's just really, really nourishing, hearty, and delicious. And then there is a beef stew recipe on the Cookful. This is just classic beef stew, the way it is supposed to be, and it's what I do all the time. Oh, there's that banging again. Sorry about that. It's what I do all the time without thinking about it. But you know what? Now I have a recipe for it too, so it's going to be the same all the time. That's kind of interesting, right? These recipes or dishes, I shouldn't call them recipes if I haven't written them down. These dishes that I've been making for years without a recipe that I now have a place to turn to get that recipe. Okay, now they are doing something with electric saws. I am going to sign off and hopefully next time I will not be stuck in my closet. Thank you for listening. I am Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, cookfor2.us, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great weekend. Let's get cooking.